I tried to do this yesterday afternoon around almost 5, except my brother-in-law and my nephew came to pick me up to go see the Nets game, which we did. But anyway, the one question that a lot of fans, you look at the video that's going to be before this, a lot of fans ask though, when they ask, what was the point of the past 2.5 years of story arc, one of the things that primarily sticks out to them is the question of what was the point of roboticizing, weaponizing, and modifying Sally, the character Sally Acorn, into Mecha Sally. What was the point? Now some will come out and say that the reason it was done was because of what's going to be happening. It's because of what we saw at the end of 252, what we're going to be seeing in Countdown to Chaos, and more importantly, what we've been introduced to throughout almost since October of last year, all the way up to now, through various sneak peeks, previews, and all that. Some people will come out and say that the reason for what happened was because they just wanted to give her a new look. And that might be true. That might be true. But then again, it's not just that either. It's not just the fact that they gave her a new look. It's more along the lines of, what was the point of even doing this at all, if you're not going to have any proper conclusion. And again, people will say there was no point. Some will argue and say that there were, there's no doubt about it. But what surprised me sometimes when I read some of the comments at a lot of these message boards was, even at Bumble King, was the fact that a lot of fans that supported the idea of what happened to her, saying it would help her character, have basically said, are basically starting to say the same thing now. They're saying, yeah, we understand why you did it, we understand her sacrifice and all that, but looking at it now, what point was there? It's like you didn't really have a point, you didn't have a proper conclusion. Now true, Ian Flynn did say that the character Ian Flynn did say that, not the character but the story, I guess in his own words, had gone a little too long without a proper conclusion. And and like I said in my other video and in my text that I put on some of the boards, he, in my opinion, he had wrote himself into a corner. He didn't have any backup plan set, just in case something happens. And that's the one thing, a writer, director, or producer should always have in mind, is a backup plan in case something happens. You always got to have one. But, again though, a lot of people say that, what happened with Sally just didn't make no sense whatsoever. It's like, you basically took a very popular character, turned her into a robot, and for what reason? Shock value? Some can say that the reason Ian did it was to prove that he's not biased, that he doesn't show favoritism. That even though he's a fan of the Sally character herself, like a lot of us are, and that even though he's a fan of the coupling, the pairing of Sonic and Sally, that he himself can show no favoritism. That he himself can show he is unbiased by doing this. which obviously he has gone out and proven. Now, some people have argued when they look at this, whether they supported the idea before or not. Some have argued that, with the fact that there was no real point in doing what you did to her, that you didn't really have to do it at all. Some have said that it had been done before. It had been done before over and over. And that you could have, to really freshen it up, you could have done it with somebody different. Except there was a problem. You see, when Ian Flynn did what he did with Sally, Ian basically said, and I'm not trying to say this, by saying that Ian looks at the Sally character as being bigger than any other character. I'm not. What I'm saying is that he probably looked at the impact she has had more so than the others. And also, you got to think of it this way. From a reality standpoint, he wanted to get very personal with it. It's like, who can we turn into a robot? Or who can we have almost just literally die, and that's close to Sonic, close enough to Sonic, to where I want to spend a certain amount of issues trying to have Sonic and the others, help that person. And the thing is to me, I think that's why he did what he did with Sally. Now again, though people ask the question, well, what was the point of making Sally into a mecha, or turning Sally into a mecha, or roboticizing Sally? What was the point? What was the point behind her sacrifice if possibly you're going to retcon it to the point that instead of her sacrificing herself and turning into a robot, that possibly she sacrifices herself and she gets a new look at it? Again, it's like there was no point in some people's eyes. It's like, what was the point of doing it? It's like, let's say with the Percy Jackson books and movies. It's like, what was the point of doing the first Percy Jackson movie if the second one's going to be almost literally on its own, with the only acknowledgement being the Percy Jackson character being the son of Poseidon and all that, with no connection whatsoever. Not saying there isn't, because I haven't seen the movie, but not saying there isn't. So, but still, you kind of get my idea. It's like, what was the point of doing that if this one's going to be its own separate entity? See what I'm saying? See what I'm saying there? What I'm saying is that it wouldn't have made no sense to do that if it was going to be its own entity, if it was going to be its own separate movie. And there have been movies like that. But the thing is, again, that is the question people ask about the whole Mecha Sally deal. What was the point of turning her into Mecha Sally if you're not going to have a proper conclusion? Now, some might say that the reason Ian Flynn did this, and I mentioned this in my other video, but I didn't mention it in the text, that the only reason Ian Flynn, did this with the whole, okay, she's gonna, you see her at the end of 252, is because, and I know some people will basically, finally agree on this, but basically they'll say it's because he did exactly what we said he did. You see, there's a lot of fans out there that will say that what Ian Flynn did to Mecha Sally was something that you could not put on page, that you could not see being done, in front of you by reading the comic. And what he had done was basically gut her, weaponize her, basically literally just take her apart and rebuild her. But the question is, we don't know if he did that, but when some of those fans that have accused Ian of doing so, basically when some fans accuse Ian of having Eggman do so in the comic, behind the scenes or off panel, I should say more like off panel, when those fans that have accused Ian of having Eggman do that off panel, pretty much when they look at something like this, instead of getting a proper conclusion, instead of getting a proper way of her being de-roboticized, they're pretty much going to come out and say, yep, this is exactly why we knew. They'll be like something like, yep, this is exactly, see what we told you? We knew he did it. He must have gutted her. He must have torn her apart. He must have removed a lot of what she was, because if he didn't, then he wouldn't have to go like this. He wouldn't have to do this. And that might be true. But then again, we don't know that. We don't know if as some fans point out, that if maybe the Genesis waves cured her. We don't know that. But again, a lot of fans still ask the question, well, what was the point if you weren't going to have a proper conclusion? What was the point of constantly doing the cat and mouse game where it's like, it's like every other issue or every issue doing the whole World Tour 2 Mecha Sally Death Egg Mark II arc? What was the point of chasing her, nearly getting her, nearly saving her, and then letting her go? What was the point of all that? Was there a point? Was there a reason? To some people, no. And again, in my honest opinion, I think, here's my honest opinion, I think there was a reason, I do. But I also, again, believe, in my opinion, that Ian Flynn wrote himself into a corner. I'm not going to lie about that. That's my personal opinion. I think he wrote himself into a corner. And you cannot, if you're planning to do a story arc like this, you have to have it planned out from start to finish. And I'm not denying he did not have it planned out from start to finish, but you also, like I said in the previous video and in the text, you got to have a backup plan. And I don't think Ian had a backup plan. I don't think he was ready for what was going to happen behind the scenes, and thus that messed up his story. Now, some people might agree with that, and some people won't. But again, when they look at what happened with Sally 2 years ago, back in issue, basically almost 22 months ago, at the end of issue 30, 22 months ago, they look at it and they're like, what was the point of even roboticizing her if she's going to be okay by issue 252? You don't have no proper conclusion. And again, only Ian Flynn can answer that question. Only he can come out and give a proper, truthful explanation. Only he can do it. And the question is, will he do it? We don't know. But he's the only one that can give a truthful explanation as to why we did not get a proper conclusion. Now, am I upset about it myself? No, not really, because, again, I pretty much knew she was going to be restored, but, we didn't know how it was going to happen. You see, there's people like me that are like, look, I'm not worried about, it's like, yeah, I'm upset they did this to her, but you know what, I'm okay, I'm fine, because I'm okay with it, though, because I know, it's like, I'm upset they did this with her, yeah, I'm not going to read the issues for a while, because I don't want to see her like that, but I'm okay, because I know she'll be restored, and guess what, she is. But the thing is, we didn't know how. And true, a lot of people will say that the way she's restored is a cop-out. A lot of people will say, well, the way she's restored is a deus ex machina, is a DEM, a duexa, if you will. That basically it's Ian's way of saying, hey, I wrote myself into a corner, so here you go. The thing is, we don't know if he wrote himself into a corner or not. But, well, actually I do. Actually, again, correcting myself, I do believe he wrote himself into a corner. I just don't think some people that support him look at it like that as well. You know, and again, a lot of people can blame what happened behind the scenes. The lawsuit, you know, Sega and Capcom demanding that the crossover take place during the scheduled time, original scheduled time that Ian wanted to finish the current story arc. So yeah, you can blame all that. You know, you can even blame Ian himself on probably writing himself into a corner or not having a backup plan, but the thing is, no matter how you look at it, you have to understand the character wasn't going to be like this forever. The character has too much of a fan base not to be restored. Again, like I said, despite all that, a lot of people will still ask the question, well, what was the point? And some will say there was no point, that it was useless, it was unnecessary. And that may be right, maybe they're right, maybe they're not. But to me, honestly, I think it's because Ian wrote himself into a corner. I really do. He wrote himself into a corner. He was not ready for what was going to go on behind the scenes. He didn't have a backup plan. So basically, this is the result of it. This is the result, and pretty much we just got... It's kind of like, again, the quote what James Wolfe quoted in one of his earlier videos, his earlier AVGN videos, where he quoted a movie quote that states, "It's just one big crap sandwich, and we all have to take a bite." And that's basically what it is. You know, as subscribers, fans, readers, supporters, you know, we may not like what's happening, but we all just got to sit back and, you know, take it for what it is. You know, it's like I said, you know, basically what that quote means is if the only source of food that you had was your own shit, excuse my language, but was your own crap, if that was the only material you could get to make a sandwich out of, for you to make sandwiches out of, for you and anybody else around, if that was your only source of nutrition, then that's all you can do. That's all you can eat. That's all you can eat to survive. And that's basically what it is. This right now is the only thing we got, is the only thing Ian's got right now to try to get things back in line. Whether we like how it's being done, whether we like how it's being brought about, that's an entirely different story. Or for a different time. But again though, we may not like how Sally's been restored. We may feel it was a cop-out. We may feel it's a do ex Mecha. And we may feel that the past 2 years, you know, was nothing more than a joyride, right, that Ian Flynn took us on with no final destination in sight. But guess what? We just have to sit back and take it for what it is. You know? I mean, am I happy at the fact that they roboticized Sally? No, I wasn't. I mean, I came out 2 years ago and I stated that. I said, no, I'm not happy, but I'm going to deal with it. But I'm going to deal with it in my own way, and I'm not going to open any issues. That's how I dealt with it. You know, am I going to open the issues now? Yeah, real soon. I'll open them. I'll even do a video so you guys can see it. But the point is, ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't necessary in the eyes of a lot of people for Ian Flynn to do this. It wasn't necessary. You know, it didn't have no real point. I mean, some people have come out and said, well, if you would have had this happen to her or that happen to her, if you would have had a proper conclusion, then yeah, there would be a reason for it, even if we didn't like it. But a lot of people have stated that they don't like it because there is no proper conclusion. And that all it was just a wasted time on Ian's part, thus by wasting the readers and the fans' time. Now again, like I said at the beginning, some will say that Ian, you know, that the reason Ian's doing this is because off panel, he had Eggman gut and basically rebuild Sally from almost the ground up. Basically gutter, if you will, surgically take stuff out and things like that. And even though people like me believe that's not true and that all he did was weld weaponized armor on her, and that is the result of the possible redesign for her, then so be it. I mean, we won't really know the answer unless Ian has Sally herself, after she remembers everything, kind of tells Sonic what happened, how she was weaponized, or unless Eggman somehow mentions it. So, to me, to me, this is just a question that a lot of fans have, and I'm trying my best to help answer it, and that's all I can do. So, till next time, guys. Let me know what you guys think below. Video response if you like, and I'll talk to you all later.